Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the July 2018 meeting of the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Association. We'll begin by asking you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the country for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion for agenda approval?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries. Public comment on matters not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on an item or topic not on the agenda? Seeing no one at this time, we'll move on to item 3, which is approval of the July 21, 2018 minutes. Since I was attending, I would move, I see that the minutes are complete and would move for approval of the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
And it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no opposed, motion carries. Item number 4, report out of closed session. Council.
Yeah, the board met in closed session to confer with legal counsel and to confer with its real property negotiator. Under item number 1 on the closed session meeting agenda, the board granted further settlement authority to legal counsel. And under item number 2 on the closed session meeting agenda, the board granted staff authority to proceed with conveyance of an easement on board property subject to final board approval.
Thank you. Item 5, review of monthly revenues and expenses.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This report summarizes revenue and expenses for the month of May. Before I start, I'll introduce Gennaro and Sarah, our 2 interns from the summer intern program that are seeing how West Africa works at the board meeting level. The starting position for May was $4.4 million, and we received significant revenue for the month, a total of 9.8, to bring the agency's cash sources to $14.3 million in 870-871. $2 million of that was the second installment in the assessment, and the other component, the 7.8, was a quarter 27 true-up and the 2 pieces of the CCON reimbursements for that land acquisition. On the expense side, most of the activity for the month was related to Southport construction. In May, as you can tell from the trend, is really starting to ramp up. We had $108,000 of environmental expenses, $250,000 of construction management expenses, and $1.55 million in actual construction cost. Total expenses for the month were $2.7 million. The agency's ending May cash position was $12 million. We met with DWR staff, and we've programmed a $33 million advance, which should arrive about mid-August, the first couple of weeks that's on program. Part of that will be $1.6 million of the DFA closeout on the North Area project, so we get reconciled our numbers with DWR and came to a number that we all both agreed on and could document. And so we expect $1.6 million for design costs. That will be reimbursed, retention release on that. The DOF audit on the construction funding agreement, the draft document is due to us or expected in mid-August. I haven't heard anything to suggest that they have any more comments than they had at the end of the close of the audit. So we think it's going to be a pretty good audit so far. Last month, we brought an item to the board to select liability insurance. We received a proposal with the same underlying insurance provider, but through a mutual, a JPA down south that does water agencies and stuff, and also includes reclamation districts. Had a little bit more coverage, about $20,000 more coverage, and the cost was about $20,000 cheaper per year, at least at this time. So we did some analysis on that, and we decided to go with the Cal Mutual's J Prima policy. Also, the city's internal audit usually is going this time. It's tentatively scheduled to start in October, so we may see some of the reports move around as we do closing entries and stuff like that. We may be down the road by that time, but just to let you know, usually we're kind of doing that right now, but it's probably going to be about the beginning of October this year. Current cash position for the agency, we've moved about $3.7 million out of the advanced funding account, so that's down to about $1.7 million. And our agency's overall cash position as of this morning was $12.4 million. So June's expenses and July's expenses will be pretty significant, so that the timing of that advance will be really good timing in that regard. The North Area closeout, we're still in geodetic review. We have made some progress. We discussed amongst our team and FPO about priorities because the resources at geodetic are so limited, and decided to focus on getting those North Area parcel geometry reviewed and approved so we can close out the North Area construction projects and get that retention freed up to use it for Southport. We hope to have that done by the end of the year. And I think that ends it for this month.
So the North Area monies, the 1 point whatever, that was for design stuff
Yeah, that's the design.
back when?
Yeah.
What is the possible amount of the retention from the north? You got to kind of.
On the north, it's a $1.6 million was
Okay.
the number, so. And that
Okay.
includes Southport design and all the North Area project design as well.
No, but the retention, if we finally do get the North Area closed out, is about the same amount?
It's about 2.8 at this time.
Okay.
I don't know if the real estate is tracked separately on that. If it is, it'll be around 2.7. But we'll find that out when we do the final reconciliation on that.
Okay, very good. Very good. Any questions, Chris?
Nope. Thank you for the update.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Move on to the consent agenda. There are 3 items. Does anyone have any questions on consent?
By anyone, that would be me.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just one question on item 6. I'm supportive of it. The assessment, just want to double check with staff. I'm not sure I'm looking at it on this one. Thank you. And it's making sure that any other noticing or anything else around the increasing the assessment.
I'm not tracking the question.
On the assessment increase that's being proposed on item 6, is that right?
The 2% increase.
The 2% increase?
Whether that, it's been properly noticed.
Is there any other noticing required to residents or
yeah.
anybody else?
We'll bring back, I think, the adjusted roll. We're working on that right now. We've got the 0 on the parcel data, and we'll run some reports and we'll identify discrepancies. We'll go through those discrepancies, and it'll be like new construction and development in the community. We'll make sure that's added to the flood assessment. We'll bring that adjusted roll back and approve that for transmission to the county, and we'll do that in August.
Okay. So as long as we're following all the right processes
Oh, yeah.
with the county and with the, okay?
Yeah.
I'm fine with the rest of them.
Okay. Well, then, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items as presented.
I'll second.
First and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no opposition, motion carries. And we'll move on to our regular agenda, which today goes right to the Southport project update. Mr. Ken.
Hello.
Good morning.
Well, good morning, Chair Ramos, members of the board. I will provide you the update for July 2018 of the Southport Levee Improvement Project. Wait for it to warm up. All right, and I've updated this kind of introduction picture to kind of demonstrate kind of where we're at currently. You'll see this is kind of the borrow areas in and around the intersection of Davis Road and Village Parkway. We've got quite a bit of work already completed, but still have plenty to do. So I'll move on to the next slide. In the July-August timeframe, we've been accomplishing and will continue to accomplish some of these items that I'll continue to list below. We've got the offset area excavation and levee embankment placement along segments B, 2, and F. Those are essentially the setback levee limits. We're doing current production around segment C with our folks in the south, and we've concentrated most of our excavation and embankment resources in the north to get that elevation up a little higher. We've also got some work going along in the levee degrade along the breaches, both in the south. We got the southeast and southwest, which have apparently been degraded. You'll see some pictures followed up on kind of what that operation looks like. The reason the resources are being pushed to the north is so they can start that levee breach up in that area sometime middle of next month. The setback levee has to be up to a certain elevation in order for us to commence that work. That's happened in the south. They're working on it in the north end. The degrade and breaches, there's a combination of excavation as well as the placement of rock to stabilize those breach areas. So that's continuing to move forward with in-water work scheduled for August 1st. So we're making good progress on that. Slurry wall installation is happening at the north and south ends. In the south end, we're currently in the B1 section, so we've finished most of backfill in segment A. Those are both fixed in place. The conventional slurry wall operation in A and B1, approximately 40 foot deep. That continues to move from south to north. And in segment G, we have the DMM with the big drill rig out there that you can probably see from the distance. That's continuing to make its way from north to south. We've got the south slurry wall that'll look to be wrapped up here in the mid-August timeframe, and we'll be wrapping up with DMM currently in the beginning of September. We've got ongoing borrow site restorations, so the borrow areas A1, A4, A3 that we used last year to build the foundation of the levee, those continue to be backfilled along with the setback levee itself, so it's kind of an ongoing operation, but it's moving along well. The seepage berm, which is on the backside of a majority of the setback levee, continues to make progress. In the south, we're all but complete. A minor portion of it needs to be done towards the north end, and we're continuing to make progress in the north. Real estate is a little bit tighter up there, so a lot of materials getting moved from different places, and the seepage berm area is being used for that. So you'll see a big stockpile of sandy type material. That's what we're using for our seepage berm. But the material's there. It's just when we be able to open up some of those areas as embankment comes up, we'll go ahead and place that seepage berm material. We've got ongoing survey work for all of this. So whether it's quantities, whether it's determining elevation, whether it's determining limits, that continues to go on. And they're also supporting the offset area stabilization. So as we go ahead and buy off areas of the south offset, either in the low flow area or up on the remnant levee, that survey work is commencing, and then we're placing erosion control and stabilization in those areas. So if you were to go out there, you'll see certain areas of the levee already kind of have kind of a greenish tint to it. That's some of the hydroseed that's been sprayed on there, and as we get closer to the completing a lot of that work, you'll see more of that area continue to look that way. And I mentioned the rock at the breaches in the south offset area. We're placing in the southwest, which is the southernmost breach. At this point, sometime in the next week and a half, we'll move to the southeast breach. And as we continue to make progress on the north, middle of next month, same type of operation will happen up there. That first picture I showed you showed those big rock piles kind of in those staging areas. That's where the material's being staged. And trucking for the most part has been substantially complete, but we do have another day or two of trucking additional rock. There's a lot of it that goes in these stabilization areas, so we'll have a little bit more of that going on, but for the most part, a lot of it's already been completed. Moving along, I'll go through some pictures, starting in the south, moving over to the north to kind of see how things are progressing. This is the slurry wall operation in the south area, so right along South River Road in segment A. As of today, they're just around the bend, just towards the top of this picture, but conventional slurry wall operation. It's been moving along very well. This is the tie-in point between segment B2 and B1. You can kind of see from this picture we have the borrow restoration area on our right. That was our borrow site A1. The setback levee right adjacent to that. And you'll see the big excavation kind of there off to the left between the remnant levee and Sacramento River. That's kind of the elevation and a rough idea what it's going to look like. We have more of that area excavated to the north, which you'll see in supplemental pictures. But the breach work you can kind of see off there to the left with the excavator. I got another picture that shows that a little bit more up close. So they've got a sheet pile wall installed along the river line. You can see some of the rock being placed along with the excavation happening on there. So it's a lot of work. The number of trucks in this particular picture, there's only a few of them, but this operation typically has about 6 to 8 trucks supporting it, just with the volume of material we're moving, depending on the distance of how far it's getting hauled. But this particular area is just about wrapped up with the placement of the rock at the bottom. We have additional layers on top that go for topsoil and additional stabilization. Here's segment C over by the Alcohol Bend area. In the distance, you can kind of see an excavator off to your right-hand side. That's the second breach, the southeast breach that we're working on. And they're going ahead and doing a similar type of operation there. Like I mentioned before, we'll go ahead and start placing rock in the next week and a half. Also in this area, you see the borrow areas. A3 is the one to the right, A4 is off to the left, and those continue to be backfilled as we continue to offset the offset area excavation. Here's that rock stockpile. That's the area being used to store the material so it gets trucked to those breaches when they're ready for placement, as well as some borrow restoration. Here you'll see the vehicle lineup. We have a couple of these kind of areas designated throughout the project. So on a daily basis, the equipment's parked in the area where the subsequent work's going to happen and go from there. This particular shot is right there in the vicinity of Davis Road and Village Parkway. You can see the downtown skyline in the background, as well as Sacramento River, but a little bit of an overview of kind of where most of the action's happening. Segment D, just north of Davis Road, you'll see the setback levee with Village Parkway to the left, and then some additional offset area excavation. The remnant levee right there, the old South River Road adjacent to it, and Sacramento River. This is the Bees Lake area. This is where they continue to do the setback levee embankment placement, as well as the access roads that'll ultimately feed the marina. You see kind of a turnout there on your left-hand side. That'll be the Sherwood access roadway will be coming in, and we have a similar one to the north. Sherwood access road embankment is nearing completion, and we'll go ahead and flop traffic over so we can continue to do that on the yacht club side. We've been coordinating with the marine owners just to keep them on the loop, and then we're reviewing traffic control plans right now just to make sure that we keep the rest of the departments abreast of what's going on. Segment F, as we get towards the north end, this is the north tie-in where the setback levee and the fix-in-place levee come together. You can see the footprint for the setback levee. We continue to make progress on embankment there. Just on the right, that's the seepage berm footprint. Like I mentioned before, some of it's being used to stockpile and mix material for the clay itself. But on the left-hand side, you'll see the remnant levee. We've actually degraded a good portion of that already, but like I said, the breach work can't occur until we get that setback levee up to a certain elevation, so that's ongoing, and that'll be one of their next milestones to meet. So we're continuing to track that progress. Over in segment G, this is the deep mix method, so the drill rig along with the kind of mixing operation that's going on over there. They've got their working pad set up. That's been moving and progressing pretty nicely. It is a slower operation, about 40 foot a day versus 200 foot a day with the conventional, but we still are on schedule to have that completed by the end of August, beginning of September. And that's just another shot kind of showing the same operation, but a different view. Cement and bentonite mixed in those silos you see there on the left. It all gets piped over into that big drill rig, and everything gets monitored via those trailer boxes that you see up there. Those are all staged with either equipment or computer electronic measuring devices, things of that nature. And like I mentioned before, it's been progressing very well. And that's what I have for you. Any questions I can answer for you?
Chris?
No, I think, do you have any, it looks like we're making progress. I mean, I drive by it, and if residents that drive by it seems to be making progress, but any concerns or risks on your side you're seeing at this point?
No, we're continuing to coordinate with, of course, our partners, DWR, Central Valley Flood Protection Board, Army Corps of Engineers, just to make sure that we have all the embankment improvements on the setback levee ready for November 1st, as well as being able to get Reclamation District 900 their access to maintain. Our milestones have about a month and a half buffer built into them, just in case there are any slides. But right now, based on the current progress, we should be done well before that. Really, at that point, it'll be a matter of just addressing some issues that we've had a couple cultural items we've run into, but we've been able to kind of maneuver and continue to work along that, work with our tribal member folks, as well as Army Corps of Engineers to move forward with that. But we all feel very confident that everything can be done by November 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Well, not too much, it's just that breach area where the rock is being placed. Just so I understand that the rock is placed and then there's soil and topsoil that goes over the majority of that?
Yeah, so the breaches themselves are openings about 1,000 foot wide in 3 locations. They have a combination of rock to stabilize the slopes, because that's where the highest velocities are coming in and out when the river enters. But we have a base of rock to help stabilize the bottom portion of it. It then will have some topsoil on top of it. In a future project, we'll do some mitigation plantings. So that'll see additional vegetation at a later time, but we do have some preliminary stuff that we're going to go ahead and throw in there. We've got Jew netting, a seed with amended topsoil that goes in there, as well as some additional coir netting and whatnot as you get further away from the breaches. But the big rock that you kind of see out there, that's what's really stabilizing right there at the river
Right where the flows
interface.
come in and out, huh?
Yeah, and in the 2 areas in the south, there's a flow-through area between those first 2, and then back behind that, between essentially the Sherwood Yacht Club and Oak Hall Bend, it kind of just fills up and goes up and down based on the river elevation. Our breach in the north functions similar to that. It doesn't have a flow-through area, so really it just kind of inundates and then goes up and down with the area. So.
Okay. And then I think I read somewhere that you're expecting visits from the senior consultants.
Yeah, the Board of
Here.
Senior Consultants is scheduled to be here towards the end of next month. We've got presentations we'll present to them on kind of, as we've gone through construction, some of the issues we've gone through there, how we've resolved them, give them updates on kind of the construction status and see what type of input. We'll also take them on a field trip, a field visit the following day, just so they can go ahead and take a look for it and see what the operations look like, and then wrap it up with any additional questions or concerns they have. And typically, they put together a report for us on their visit and letting us know any recommendations that they have.
I'm just curious, are they kept up to date on an ongoing basis, or is it?
Every month, they go
Okay.
through reports that are shared with the entire team. And then, like I said, usually once a year we have them visit. So we had them visit last year. This is this time around.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10, Wasafka project updates.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos, members of the board. Just one little bit to add on the Southport project. You know, the Time Oil remediation site lies within the project footprint. That's progressing fairly well. Hoping to have things wrapped up by the end of the month or early next. There are 2 separate excavations, a south pit, if you will, and a north pit. South pit, all the excavation is complete. They're in the process of backfill and compaction with, I believe, all of the material, the contaminated material has been hauled away. And then they are proceeding with the north pit excavation as we speak. So hope to wrap it up in the next couple of weeks. Cultural resources, Ken mentioned there's been a couple of cultural sites within the project. There's one in the north area that the treatment plan has been completed, and the area has been sort of an exclusion zone established, and the contractor's free now to work around that area to continue all their offset area excavation and material placement. In the southern portion of the project, we have a couple different locations with cultural sites. One of them is in an area that cannot be avoided, and so we are working through, we just completed our treatment plan for that particular site. It is with the Corps for internal routing. We expect it to go out for consultation with the State Historic Preservation Officer and tribes by the end of the week, with about a 15-day turnaround time, so that once approved, we can give the we can get our crews in there to do to harvest the material, if you will, and to then relocate it someplace else nearby. The other site is in an area that we have some flexibility to do some redesign in the offset area. So similar to what we did at 3000 South River Road, we were looking at modifying the design and the hilly or heterogeneity features within the offset area. Our design engineer, HDR, has provided a draft of that, and we're in the process of reviewing that now, seeing if any additional hydraulic modeling or sediment transport modeling needs to be done based on the changes. And once that review is complete and feedback given, then we'll be able to finalize that treatment plan. We're targeting end of this week or early next to have that plan completed and then out for review by the SHPO and tribes as well. So that's sort of the status of the cultural activities. All right, so federal project. I believe the board is aware that we were looking for funding through a couple of options or alternatives this year for our project. First was the 18 work plan by the Army Corps. We did not receive any work plan funding for PED or preliminary engineering and design, but all indications up and down the chain at the Corps, including Matsui and her staff, all the indications were that there was a good likelihood that we would receive funding through the supplemental appropriation. That was released July 5th, and for a variety of reasons, I think the primary one being the limited amount of funding, or the fixed amount of funding they had to distribute amongst projects in non-hurricane affected states was just shy of about $5 billion. You couple that with the direction to fund projects in their entirety, the entire both federal and non-federal share. When it came down to funding projects in our region, had they funded everybody, including us, they essentially would have used up the entire non-hurricane, entire allocation for the non-hurricane states. So somewhere along the line there, those back in DC made the decision to fund one project, American River Common Features, and not fund the West Sac project. And I think it really came down to a choice between one or the other. Theirs is a $1.5 billion project, ours is a $1 billion project, and either one of us, if you fund both of us in our entirety, we use up, a significant portion, if not all, when you couple it with the rest of the non-hurricane state funding. So, obviously, we're disappointed, and we are exploring, or not exploring, but we're working with the Corps to make sure that the normal funding process continues. It's a slow stream of funding, the normal federal process. It's not ideal, but we want to make sure that that continues and that we take advantage of every opportunity to receive funding. Well, we also want to be ready in the event that additional funding becomes available under the supplemental appropriation. Whether funds that have been appropriated, either in California, in this district, or even across the nation, if funds are freed up for whatever reason, we want to make sure that folks know that we're ready, that this district is ready to receive those funds and apply it to the West Sac project. Guidelines for the supplemental appropriation are due out in the next 2 to 4 weeks. And we're currently working on some messaging for folks like Matsui, perhaps the mayor, letters to the ASA headquarters to convey our disappointment and what we're looking to promote and take advantage of should funding come available. I'd like to get those messages out and those meetings, if they take place, to happen in advance of the guidelines being released. So if there's the ability to have a line item or something in those guidelines, if they're that specific, that would allow funding to come to the district, we can take advantage of that.
When do you expect the guidelines to,
Well,
is there a timetable on it?
what we got from the Corps was 2 to 4 weeks.
That could mean 2 to 6 months.
Yeah, it's, unfortunately, the actual supplemental appropriation allocations were due, they were about 2 months behind when they were due. And the guidelines, should have been released at the same time. They weren't. And so they're 2 to 4 weeks, at the latest intel anyways, 2 to 4 weeks away. So I think getting our viewpoints heard sooner rather than later is the way to go. So we're working with our federal lobbyist. I've provided some messaging points to them today, looking for feedback from them and identifying a plan of action and participants to carry those messages for us. Before I move on to any other topic areas, well, just one other topic area, is there any questions or anything about the federal project or where we are or where we're going?
I would just say that it sounds like, you have a plan, a game plan to respond, and I think we need to do that as soon as we can and as forcefully as, that makes sense. and then continue up. If, if there's an opportunity to influence those guidelines in some form, that's where we need to concentrate on at this moment. The next round of appropriations will happen soon enough, but we need to try to make sure there is some flexibility if there are monies that free up. So I'd say keep at it, and if you need anything from this board as far as, communications, we're ready to do that.
I agree, 100%.
All right. The last item that I wanted to update the board on is the Deepwater Ship Channel Drainage Project. The contractor is moving along, I think, a little bit ahead of schedule, but for the most part on schedule. Work is progressing from the south end of the project to the north, so they've already done the tie-in at the south end to the main drain pump station. They're proceeding north now. They're just this week starting to get behind the first housing development. I think it's Bridgeway Island area. And again, it's proceeding as planned and no surprises thus far.
Refresh my memory, the funding for this is coming from WSAFCA at this point?
Correct.
And so, which, we've positioned it to be available for credit, but the state's not involved or anyone else at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
We did execute a 221 MOU for credit.
Okay.
That does, our original 221 credit MOU really just addressed Southport and the work that we're doing there to advance the federal project. The last 221 MOU that we executed, just to refresh your memory, was a little broader and included seepage repairs, which this drainage project is the first step in addressing the seepage repairs for the Deepwater Ship Channel East levee. So we will be, when the project is done, we'll put together a report and everything that we'll submit to the Corps as part of a credit package. That concludes my updates. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that the board has.
Chris?
Nope, no questions. Thanks, Greg.
Nope, thank you very much, Greg. Item 11, director's comments.
No comments.
And I don't either, so we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.